Full speed, Kevin.
It's literally turning into worst case
the latest
scenario.
data tells us that we're dealing with essentially a worst
literally
case
turning
scenario.
into worst
I'm
case
afraid
scenario.
that the latest data tells us that we're dealing with
literally
essentially a
turning
worst
into
case
worst
scenario.
case scenario.
I'm afraid that the latest data tells us that we're
literally
dealing
turning
with
into
essentially a
worst
worst
case
case
scenario.
scenario. I'm afraid that the latest data
literally
tells us that
turning
we're
into
dealing
worst
with
case.
On every slide, the first slide, I have quotes, and I know that you don't read them at all because you don't need to read them to pass or get a good grade. But this one is pretty cool. The quote from Alice in Wonderland: "One can't believe impossible things," said Alice. "I dare say you haven't had much practice," said the Queen. "Why, sometimes I've believed as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast." So that's totally suitable for this lecture. A lot of impossible things are going to happen today.
At UNC Gilling School of Global Public Health, we work on coronavirus, which infect many different kinds of mammals and birds and are notoriously good at jumping from wild animals to cause devastating infections in humans. One recent example of this is MERS coronavirus, which was discovered to have jumped from bats to camels to humans in 2012. To date, MERS has caused over 2,000 cases globally, and 4 in 10 people who get infected with MERS die from the infection. As we saw with the global epidemic of SARS coronavirus in 2003, air travel of MERS-infected persons from the Middle East has carried the virus to 27 countries, including South Korea, where there are almost 200 MERS cases. To date, there are no treatments for any human coronavirus. In collaboration with Gilead Sciences and Vanderbilt School of Medicine, we've discovered an experimental antiviral drug called GS5734, which can prevent SARS coronavirus disease in mice even if given after infection has been established.
We tested this drug against multiple genetically diverse coronavirus, and it worked against them all. These results make us hopeful that this drug could have immediate use in clinical trial with patients with MERS, and maybe even in the future if a novel coronavirus were to emerge.
This work was published today in Science Translational Medicine.
This study is important because this is the first drug that's been shown to work against highly pathogenic emerging coronaviruses, and it has high potential to work in human settings.
By about 1660, John Locke wrote that day laborers and tradesmen, spinsters and dairymaids must be told what to believe. The greatest part cannot know, and therefore they must believe.
But the GN1 is very, very alarming because the mutations are no longer restricted to spike protein, which indicates enhanced activity of CTLs to diminish viral infectiousness. And that CTL activity is responsible for the decline of T cells that in fact boost the non-neutralizing antibodies that prevent virulence. So that is what I've been predicting all the time, that ultimately this evolution would inevitably lead to the emergence of a highly virulent variant that would cause waves of hospitalization and severe disease in highly vaccinated countries. Of course, always the same, only in highly vaccinated countries, right?
So well, that's a relief.
But you can tell if someone's lying, you can sort of feel it in people. And I have lied. I'm sure I'll lie again. I don't want to lie, I don't think I'm a liar. I try not to be a liar. I don't want to be a liar. I think it's really important not to be a liar.
Specialization should make you suspicious. It should, because if it's gotten harder to evaluate what's going on, then it's presumably gotten easier for people to lie and to exaggerate, and then one should be a little bit suspicious, and that's sort of my starting bias.
I'm going to kind of narrate the beginning here because I want to make it very clear from the beginning, anyone tuning in for the first time, the absolute clear message is that the populist right in America has been captured by a group of actors that have created an illusion of consensus about a lab leak gain-of-function virus. And if you want to rescue your family and friends from this fake populist movement, it is going to require a lot of biology, and it's going to require accepting that a lot of people that you might think, or your family and friends might think are good guys, are actually wittingly or unwittingly participating in this. It is a manipulation of our society that is occurring here. And not everybody knows. A lot of people in academic biology are just wholly unaware, just like I was 5 years ago. And so there is hope that more people can be brought to realize how we've been manipulated, but it's going to be very difficult because there are active traitors that have been put in place to curate this narrative about a novel virus, to get in front of people like Byron Bridle, to make sure that Byron Bridle focused on the transfection and did not realize or come to realize that the novel virus narrative was the trap. And so Byron Bridle is another person who's probably unwittingly participating because these three guys ganged up on him. These three guys have ganged up on me before. And so I know that these people are traitors. I know that they are selling out our grandkids just in the same way that Steve Bannon and this guy would sell out our grandkids and have been for the last 10 years or more. They are manipulating this unseen mechanism of society, and they constitute part of an invisible government that is the true ruling power of our country. They're just herding cats, and they're using social media to do it. That's the most frightening part. These actors were put in place on social media to curate the skepticism of the novel virus, to fuel a narrative that accepted the novel virus and even accepted the fact that it was likely a lab leak or even a bioweapon. And the reason why was so that the transfection would never be blamed for all of the harm that it was expected to do over time as they slowly transitioned our already criminal vaccine schedule in America to transfection.
The technology professor said very good because the question was very good. And of course, as I've been trying to say for 4 years now, there is no pandemic. There was no pandemic, and there will be no pandemic. And it's like Jay said, the RNA can't pandemic. It can't. And there's no reason to discuss this anymore because it's clear. And if it's clear, we shouldn't waste time talking about it.
And I would argue that that's absolutely absurd. If RNA cannot pandemic, then this is the most important basic biology lesson that we can give to our grandkids, because this succinct 3-word phrase is enough to dispel the entire public health narrative. And so it is striking to me that both of these doctors think that we shouldn't waste time talking about it if indeed Jay is right. RNA cannot pandemic.
Your latest video with Paul was amazing, JJ.
Wow,
Really,
that's a very nice compliment. Thank you very much. Can you hear me better now or not?
Yes.
Much better.
Okay, good.
it was really like it nailed down 2 things for me, but I finally really understand the infectious clone idea, and I think it's very, very likely what happened.
And despite the fact that it's very,
JJ?
very likely what happened,
Are you going to do the CD and
Despite-
tape analogy, because that really, really hit home for me?
despite the fact that she even really loves the analogy to describe it, that it kept her up at night, she has never promoted those ideas as mine. Even though that she will later, you will see her on a stream with me and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Robert Malone and Meryl Nass and Tess Laurie, these people will not admit, these organizations will not admit that any good biological idea that they have had, they have diluted, they have titrated, they have obfuscated the truth, by not telling you what Brandy Vaughn said best in 2016 already, before any of these people were on the scene. It is extraordinary where we are because it can be seen. The illusion and the team worst case scenario can be seen. They are visible right now. These are not postdocs, are not post-secondary degrees, and she and they know this. If you are not familiar with the SPARS pandemic exercise document and what I'm referring to when I say Epigirl, you don't understand what Steve Kirsch is doing. You don't understand what Jessica Rose is doing. You don't understand what a lot of these people are being set up to do by others that are actors. The ones that all agree to accept her CV as 5 post-secondary degrees. I mean, it is maximum absurdity that all of these people seem to ignore that, including these skeptics who supposedly are working actively to expose these people in the background as fake virology pushing public health puppets. And yet, for some reason, the only person that these 6 people have managed to ever attack in the last 5 years and publicly say is a puppet is myself. Kevin McCairn is a guy who I think was recruited specifically to deal with me. And he very quickly in 2020 knew that these other people were really going to be important. These other international actors, these other American actors with book deals and with grants and these kinds of things. And so the illusion of consensus created by Team
I'm
Worst
not
Case
sure
Scenario
exactly who he is. His name is JJCouey.
is one that is revolves around the idea that they never say murder. They're never going to tell you that they murdered people in America to create the illusion of a pandemic. They locked down Australia and didn't murder people to create the illusion of a pandemic happening in America. None of those people are going to say that. None of these people are going to say it, even though I've been trying to tell them that for almost 3 years now.
Jonathan, who's going to talk about his latest kind of distillation of what the
I think it's very important to understand that I don't take it very lightly to say that I think that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is being misled by his advisors and the people behind the scenes. I don't think he's sophisticated enough to understand that for his entire life, he has been a Truman Show victim. And in this particular case, with this particular biology, these people are lying. Now,
So for what it's worth, I mean, it's such a chaotic scene.
Before I let it play, this one is especially important because this is a person who overplayed her hand several times. I think made several key miscalculations because this might be a bench warming team that was brought on to try and keep me busy and persuade me that there were other people worth talking to. And so I wasted more than a year and a half on these 3 people that have all turned out to be traitors as well. Now, what's important here is that in this particular voicemail, she is going to refer to a Substack named Sage Hana. Say that it's a he, but she's not really sure who runs the Substack, and then also claim that that Substack threatened with her life. Now, the important thing to understand about Sage Hana, the anonymous Substack hero, is that that is one of the few Substacks that has occasionally cited my work. And I would bet dollars to donuts that if you go to Sage Hana and try to find the last time that Substack cited my work as being seminal to understanding the illusion of the pandemic, I think you'll strike out. Because it is very likely that just like JJCouey was actually part of the same illusion, and that's why these people were so adamant that I should hate JJCouey, it's also probably these people or their associates that run the Substack Sage Hana, and that's why every once in a while that Substack was able to cite me or to say something that I said was interesting, but not quite absorb the whole message, the simple message that intramuscular injection is dumb, that RNA cannot pandemic, and that the vaccine schedule in America is criminal. And so Jessica Hockett, an American faker, coordinating with these international traders who lost 3 of my presentations that I gave to Panda. These people would also like you to believe that they're against Sage Hana. Oh, guess I gotta push play again here. Oh.
Well, you know, I don't follow very many people anymore. I just follow like 22. If I follow somebody, I trust them. You know, as far as I know, as much as it depends on my knowledge and sense of things, you know, that it's not that I agree with everything that person says necessarily, but that person they are who they say they are. They are authentic. If, you know, I admit that I'm biased because I know that, especially Jonathan Engler, I know him well. So, and have, you know, for a year plus. So,
I mean, a year plus, what a great friendship they have.
If Jonathan Engler turns out to be, you know, something that he's not, or some kind of manipulator, I mean, I would be devastated. I would be absolutely devastated, and probably, you know, quit this whole thing and be like, okay, then I don't know anybody. Then I can't tell anything. So that doesn't mean that you have to see it the same way. You know, Martin's saying, like, as far as I.
So think about how non-committal that is. If I'm saying that these people are traitors to America, and she says, well, I don't see it that way, but you don't have to see it the way that I see it. This is the maximum bullshit. This is the maximum level of malevolence that you see here, because it's contradictory, it's flirting, it's hilarious, it's Valley Girl, it's liars, okay? And I have their private messages, their direct messages, their voicemails. And if I were to publish all of those, these people would, beyond a shadow of a doubt, be revealed as the meddling liars that they are. So it is extraordinary to me that they go on writing their Substacks and pretending like I've never existed in their lives, because those days are coming where all of this will be revealed, and Jessica Hockett will be revealed to the American public and to the entire world that cares, that she was always playing against us, just like Nick Hudson, just like Jonathan Engler. I am making accusations that I do not take lightly. I am making accusations against people that have meddled with me and my ability to make a living, my ability to run a business based out of biological consulting and teaching on the internet and content creation. These people have actively meddled against that while taking probably laundered money from Substack, which could be revealed in an investigation. Book deals, all kinds of other crap. Listen carefully.
I know. Martin and Norman Fenton are putting, you know, they put their Substacks over the past 4 years into a book. I've read I skimmed the book, and the chapter, or excuse me, that paper that they, that Jonathan and Martin just wrote, where they included your work, it's going into that book. And content that I wrote with them is going into that book. You know, Martin's in the academic world. He was finishing marking up papers this week. So, and you know, he does play things a little closer to the vest, right? That is the way he is on social media. But my experiences with him have been very good. So yeah, if those guys are like playing me or using me or.
Please recall that this is a married woman with a restaurateur husband who lives in Chicago, apparently, whose restaurateur husband and herself used to live in Northern Virginia, I believe. She's leaving like 8-minute voicemail messages on another man's phone who she's never met in person, and also having relationships with other men across the ocean that she doesn't know, and swears that they must be good guys, because I've been friends with these guys for like a year. Just try to keep in context what's going on here, what they did, what they are willing to do over the course of many, many months. They will just lie to people.
who knows, right? Again, I don't know what to say, but I would continue, if I can't tell you what to do, but I would continue to give them, I recommend giving them the benefit of the doubt.
This is after me telling her that they are traitors to American grandchildren and they are liars to her and me and everybody. After I told her this is her response.
Until there's really, really good reason not to. Catherine Watson, interesting one for me. I mean, I replied to her on Sage Hannah's Substack. I actually blocked Sage Hannah, but because he, told me he didn't care if I got shot in the head or some kind of crazy nonsense. I have no idea who runs that Substack. I think Catherine's legitimate. I don't understand the role of Sasha Latipova 100%, but I've been honest about that with people about what I think is going on there.
Again, trying to explain to her that Sasha Latipova is a traitor to our grandchildren, and here she is coping, pretending that, well, I've already said I don't know what Sasha's doing. Just like I already said that I kind of like Jonathan and Nick. This is the most ridiculously huge, incriminating voicemail that there is. If you realize that this is like one day after she released the video of herself, her friend Hugh Aston, and myself presenting to Ron Johnson's staff after 2 years of waiting, she finally got their attention on Twitter. It wasn't me who got invited to a meeting to present, even though Ron Johnson called me 3 years before this. I never got invited until good old Jessica Hockett got a hearing with some staff members, and then she released that video, sent this ridiculous voicemail to me, and then called Mark Kulak, told him that she was afraid and was going to call the cops on him, and at the same time sent me an email with an ultimatum about, maybe we should have a sit down with you and Jonathan Engler, and we can clear all this up right now, but you should choose sides. Ladies and gentlemen, they have spread their butter over too much bread. These people are so transparently traitors, so transparently liars. After 5 years, their cognitive understanding and ability to explain what happened has so poorly progressed that this is a voicemail from a woman who has left X completely. And why? Because she wants to get rid of the direct messages that I've already screenshot daily. These are the kind of amateurs that we are playing with because they actually think that we didn't know. They actually think that we weren't already keeping track of them. How else could we possibly have so much data on them if we weren't already listening and keeping track of their inconsistencies, their incongruencies, their inability to promote anybody but each other? These are traitors. They belong in jail. Everybody on this screen belongs in jail or in witness protection after having turned in and told what happened. That is the accusation. That is what I want. That is what the message of Gigaohm Biological is. If that doesn't jive with you or it doesn't ring true with you, it's good to get out now because the stream this is not going away.
Head down. I'm really trying to focus on what I'm doing and what I do well as much as possible because I believe that will bring the best result. And you've been really formative, for me, and I think a lot of other people, and you've taken the hits, not just with the clone stuff or the possibilities of, building a biological bridge there with the clone, but you've been helpful in helping people see who some of these players really are. I think that in some ways is probably your best, biggest contribution. And I've tried to honor that and cite you where and when I can. So, I only know who I am and I'm legit. Okay, have a good day.
It's pathetic, really, because none of them will ever mention that supplementary oxygen all by itself in a healthy human being can induce ARDS, which could lead to pneumonia. Ventilators were used to stop the spread, but also to apply oxygen in the same way. A lack of antibiotic use in that scenario would be murder. And the multi-year opioid crisis allowed to go wild for 2020, 21, and 22 is never mentioned as a source of the decreasing life expectancy in America. More importantly, it was actually specifically cited by both Pierre Corey and the traitor Jessica Rose as not being the source of the decrease in life expectancy, which is extraordinary as far as admissions go. And that's why none of these people for 5 years have ever been able to explain why PCR as a diagnostic is a fraud. Instead, many of them were very upfront and out in front explaining exactly how it works and why overcycling might be a problem. None of them will ever explain Brandy Vaughn's absolutely acidic comparison between ingestion and injection of a pharmaceutical. This acidic meaning it just dissolves all the other arguments. You don't have to go any farther than that. That's the biology right there. It's injection versus ingestion of a pharmaceutical. And we have injections, lots of them, and they are completely, there's no liability. And there's no biology to support it. And these same people will never mention the population pyramid because the population pyramid is a biological phenomenon. It is a source of an increase in all-cause mortality that they knew was coming and they were put in place to distort. That's why none of them will mention Brandy Vaughn. So you want to know how they stay on script? They don't mention supplementary oxygen at all. They say things like remdesivir and ventilators. They skip the starting point. They do not mention a lack of antibiotic use, again, because the starting point alone, supplementary oxygen, can get you to a stage where you have pneumonia, and if they don't give you antibiotics, you will die. Do not mention the multi-year opioid crisis. Everybody from Meryl Nass to Jessica Rose to Pierre Corey to, the virology great Geert van den Bosch. He's, I didn't know that was, I don't know anything about opioids and blah, blah, blah. Because it would ruin their narrative. And that's why these same people didn't explain PCR as a fraud or sequencing as a fraud or who was doing the sequencing for the first 3 years, not to mention Brandy Vaughn.
Shouldn't just be a few people that are leaders. Everybody has to figure out their own leader inside themselves. If they're too shy to go approach somebody in person, then stick a card or a flyer on someone's car next to you every time you park your car. Stick a card inside of a gas station credit card slot every time you get gas. If everybody that is aware of the truth and awake to the truth started to do these things, we can touch people, the hearts and minds of people, one person at a time in day-to-day living. We don't need these echo chambers online where we're all repeating to the same followers most of the time.
Now, one thing to keep in mind, I think, is that unlike at this time before the pandemic or just after the pandemic started, but for sure in 2015 and 2016, this strategy would have worked. This strategy of Brandy Vaughn putting things on paper and also selling materials and also putting these billboards up was working, okay? But now that we have been subject to 5 years of psychological torture and 5 years of brainwashing, this simple tactic won't work because most people will simply dismiss our biology as just anti-vaxxer nonsense. And so we need a new strategy. We need to be teaching this from the ground up, from the Biology 101 up, so that we're not starting with anti-vax, even though that is where we are. We are starting with our understanding of biology, which actually edifies the stance of anti-vax.
We get a few new people, but I think we really need more people to
injection.
take what they're learning and get out there and touch the people that they're in a community with.
And so, as usual, I'm going to dedicate this Monday stream to the memory of Brandy Vaughn, who said it exactly right when no one else around her would. This is Gigaohm Biological, a high-resistance, low-noise information brief brought to you by a biology enthusiast, let's say. I really think that biology is the way. I think if we get a new Biology 101 in your head, maybe not quite as is done and depicted in this picture, but just by reading and by sharing discussions about the right thing, we can break the illusion of consensus that has been consciously and intelligently created, right? They have absolutely positively manipulated us because of how you see Bob's picture there, sitting on the couch with our phones and our devices, binge watching. We are being manipulated by this invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country right now. That's why everybody's so up in arms. These are social media programs that should better be called military control programs. They are military algorithms. I'm going to go hard again today, going full court press. We're going to be very physical in the paint today because you might not see me play again. I don't know when is the last time or the next time I'm going to be able to say this. So again, my name is JJCouey. I am the chief biologist of Gigaohm Biological. You can find my work on PubMed using my last name plus my first two initials. There's one paper there that's fun to look at because a lot of those people are meddlers, and I didn't know it at the time, of course. I presented to Panda. Of course, Nick lost my work and Jonathan lost my work. I presented to the NCI. I don't think that's a very great, it means well, I guess, at least it used to. The Wellness Company, same deal. I've presented all this stuff to them. I was a staff scientist for Children's Health Defense for about a half a year. And before that, for more than a year, I was the scientific consultant behind this book with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's now our Secretary of Health and Human Services. I told that story and where we are probably best recently at the Red Pill Expo in 2024. And moving forward, I have plans to take this to the basketball court because I think I'm trying to find a way to make this work for me and my family, and I think the way to do it is going to be biology on the basketball court. I'm going to do Journal Club on a basketball court. I'm going to do Biology 101 on the basketball court. I'm going to do as much basketball as I can because it's the one thing that I truly love to do, and I want to be able to do it while I'm still young. I'm kind of full court press on that as well, so that's some of the reason why I'm not always on air. But soon that's going to peak all around, including on YouTube, and I think it's going to be a big hit. Ladies and gentlemen, you can support the stream by going to gigaohmbiological.com. I guess maybe if you haven't seen me before, that's not much of a pitch. But I think after this show, if you haven't seen me before, you might understand the importance of this to where we are headed. If you want to share my work, you can go to stream.gigaohm.bio. That's a place that I host. There are no algorithms, no sign-ins. You can even download the videos so you can watch them offline. If you want to communicate with us, please go to gigaohm.bio or send a direct email to that address there on the screen. And you can also send things to P.O. Box 802 Bethel Park, PA 15102. And checks can be made out to JJCouey or to Gigaohm Biological. They're always good because this is just a sole proprietorship here. So it's all the same whole. Thank you very much, guys.
I don't care how you get there. I don't care what you do to get there. The goal is to win.
What time is it? Game time! Woo! Oh man, I didn't even think about that. I gotta play something.
I'm trying to tell you something about my life. Maybe give me insight between black and white. And the best thing you ever done for me is to help me take my life less seriously. It's only life after all. yeah. Well, darkness has a hunger that's insatiable, and lightness has a call that's hard to hear. And I wrap my fear around me like a blanket. I sailed my ship of safety till I sank it. I'm crawling on your shores. And I went to the doctor, I went to the mountains, I looked to the children, I drank from the fountains. There's more than one answer to these questions, pointing me in a crooked line. And the less I seek my source for some definitive, closer I am to find, yeah. Closer I am to find, yeah. And I went to see the doctor of philosophy, with a poster of Rasputin and a beer down to his knee. He never did marry or see a big great movie. He graded my performance. He said he could see through me. I spent 4 years prostrate to the higher mind. Got my paper and I was free. I went to the doctor, I went to the mountains, I looked to the children, I drank from the fountains. There's more than one answer to these questions, pointing me in a crooked line. And the less I seek my source for some definitive, closer I am to find, yeah. Closer I am to find, yeah. I stopped by the bar at 3 a.m. to seek solace in a bottle or possibly a friend. And I woke up with a headache like my head against a board, twice as cloudy as I'd been the night before. And I went in seeking clarity. And I went to the doctor, I went to the mountains, I looked to the children, I drank from the fountain. And we go to the doctor, we go to the mountains, we look to the children, we drink from the fountain. Yeah, we go to the Bible, we go through the workout, we read up on revival, we stand up for the lookout. There's more than one answer to these questions, pointing me in a crooked line. And the less I seek my source for some definitive, closer I am to find. Closer I am to find. Closer I am to find, yeah.
That is a absolutely spectacular tune that I actually got to see performed live more than once. Fun group, the Indigo Girls there. Did I see them open for Bela Fleck and the Flecktones once? I for some reason I think I did, but I could be completely imagining that. Welcome to the show. They can only make admissions after 5 years, in fact. There's absolutely no doubt that we are winning right now. And so that's why I think it's very appropriate to start with such a joyful song, and then maybe also this one. Because this spectacular commitment to lies is going to keep going on. There's no other way to explain Kevin McKernan's, public presence for 5 years, and more importantly, what they've said, what he's said. His track record suggests that he's a traitor. I don't know how else to say it more succinctly. His Twitter and X posts suggests that he is a traitor. His track record of meddling with my family and myself suggests that he is a traitor. His alliance and promotion by Mary Holland and Children's Health Defense about the DNA contamination 5 years later suggests that he is a traitor. And I think the reason why we have so many traitors in our midst is because the The powers that be need us to teach our children that gain of function is something they need to fear in the future, that maybe measles is going to become something they need to get revaccinated for. And Gigaohm Biological really represents the farm animals waking up, the farm animals finding common sense again, and not this 2 legs is better than one thing, but just, united non-compliance. No more of this. That's what we need to teach our children, and we can do that if we teach them the truth of the biology. Obviously, it's our fault that this picture exists. Obviously, it's our fault that we lost the attention of our college kids because we blew it. We had this history, and the machine was thorough. And so if you want to get out, you're going to have to understand that it's not just these charlatans, although they are very important people on this screen, like Steve Bannon and Stanley Prusner and David Hone, Sina Bavari, names that nobody's mentioning. But you need to also understand that these people, of course, coordinated a narrative. And the reason why it could be different this time is because they're exposed. Because the power of social media is also a weakness for them, because you can just go back and look at their track records and see that these people are not here for our grandkids. They are there for the slavers. That's why I think this stream represents some kind of hope. It represents some kind of, unavoidable truth in the future that these people cannot escape. That people learning biology are finally awakening and realizing that there are more people around who understand it. We must, as a group, seek the truth. We have to start with the truth. And if we start with the truth, intramuscular injection of medicine is dumb. If we start with the truth, transfection in healthy people is a crime. If we start with the truth, RNA cannot pandemic. And these illusions require your participation to sustain. They also require the insistence on certainty by people as diverse as Mary Holland and Paul Offit. And once you understand that these people have been in place for more than a decade, you will understand why these truths may be first best said by Brandy Vaughn, but have been said by other people and now myself. These truths need to be ignored because the vaccine schedule in the United States is a criminal enterprise. That's how you can explain why the guy from the Human Genome Project is up in my face for 5 years. That's why you can explain why people like George Webb were unleashed on people like Mark Kulak. It is the way we are governed. Welcome to the show. This is Gigaohm Biological. My name is JJCouey. I'm on Team USA. I hope you are too. I'm fighting for America's grandkids because this is for all the marbles. And I think all the marbles are essentially America's grandkids. Now, this is not a message for everyone, but it is a message for anyone. It's not for Democrats or Republicans or rich or poor people, although I would love it if some rich people would start to support this work. Because I think we could do a lot more with financial stability. I know I could do a lot more with financial stability. All the marbles on Earth are our grandkids. It's not arguing about mandates. It's about understanding that these people are playing a game for our grandkids. They are being played. They have been put in place. They are being coerced. Many of them are participating wholly willingly in order to audition and climb the ladder of what they see as the ruling elite. That's the best way to see it. It's for all the marbles, and you need to start with the truth. And if you start with the truth, you'll get there. That's what I think. And so I call it a Lollapalooza of liars because it is an interweaved group of stages and performers that talk to each other behind stage and coordinate their performances on the stages. Because again, this is for all the grandchildren of Earth. That's why no one's really talking about Brandy Vaughn. No one ever, that's why Brandy Vaughn is dead. Let's just put it that way right now on March 17th. It's a long, strange trip it's been for me to come to understand exactly or close to understanding how malevolent this whole thing is, this Lollapalooza of liars. But most of the people that I've taken some selfies with essentially already knew from the moment that my arm went around them that I didn't believe them. From the moment that we shook hands and their clammy little gripless handshake, I already understood that they were liars. You can tell when you approach someone with the kind of energy of truth that I have, and they're shunning you like a bright light, where they lean away from you in a picture like this, right? But there's also people who are fully willing to come to your house, like really come to your house with their wife and daughter. That's how bad it is. They're willing to come to your house with their wife and daughter. And that's more than one person that I'm talking about here over the course of these 5 years. They're willing to come to your house from Japan. They're willing to stream with you and 5 other people and then never share it with anyone. They're willing to have, dinner and lunch with you, tell you how great you are, and then ignore you when it counts. It's not a fun message, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not enjoying this. Oftentimes I wonder, when is the last time that I'm going to be allowed to present this data for what it is, where these are people that the overclass, they're placing them. And you can tell because these people are not capable of really explaining or understanding what actually happened. They are just fully in on the narrative. I mean, if I could explain to you the extent to which I don't think some of these things I'm not really ready to say yet. I don't want to burn all of the bridges, but I really think it's important to understand that this graph reveals murder, not a novel virus, not a biological phenomenon, unless you count murder as a biological phenomenon, because this is not natural. The red in this graph represents pneumonia deaths, and you can clearly see that we've always had it under control, and we got it back under control at the end of 2022. So what happened here is murder. And so they placed us, they have been placing people, and in this particular case, they placed people all over the internet, told us to go home and solve the mystery on Twitter. Thank goodness Elon Musk saved the town square and renamed it X. And now these people don't want to talk about 2020. They want to talk about how bad the COVID shot is and how there's DNA in it and SV40 in it. And how this was a gain-of-function lab leak all along, says the New York Times, 5 years later. This is a highly orchestrated manipulation of the very mythology, the very narrative of American history that we will pass on to our children. That right now teachers are passing on to our children, that college professors are passing on to our college-age kids. That's what's happening. Our college-age adults, they're all inheriting an incorrect biological American history of the last 5 years because none of them understand the limitations of PCR and the difference between it being used as a diagnostic versus being used on an academic bench. None of them are able to understand the cold truth of pure oxygen being toxic. Otherwise, there'd still be oxygen bars now, wouldn't there, ladies? Not only, but this is the worst one for any, budding MD or somebody who thinks they know what's going on. Understand that we were calling things a viral syndrome and justifying not using antibiotics on a urinary tract infection because it's a viral syndrome, not using it on pneumonia because it's viral pneumonia. That is semantic, bold-faced labeling of murder. Anywhere where you find those words deployed like that, it's murder. It's easy. Any doctor that doesn't understand this or can't imagine or fathom this, you are wittingly or unwittingly a part of this. You are a murderer. You are guilty of manslaughter. And eventually, my grandkids are going to consider you a criminal. That's the best case scenario for you. If they run out this clock on me, it's still going to be my kids and their kids that are going to know the truth about these people and how they did it. I assure you. It's murder and lies, ladies and gentlemen. It's murder and lies. That's why, it's as simple as this. That describes what this picture is. And Robert Malone and Merrill Nass and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Mary Holland and Pierre Corey and Jessica Rose and Brett Weinstein, and the list is endless. They're all lying about it. Some of them may have not have been sophisticated enough to understand it at some point, but they all know they're lying about it now because it's 5 years in. And because they've all met me. So they all know the truth about PCR. They all know the truth about ARDS. They all know the truth about antibiotics being a crime. They all know that this remnant stream is real. And they all know they were out there protecting it. They were out there protecting it with the absolutely ridiculously dumb objection that they're overcycling it. And it's a medical diagnostic that didn't need FDA approval and now just basically has approval because no one's going to stand up for it. Marty McCarty is being inserted into the FDA. And if you look on YouTube and find out what he was saying in 2020 and 2021, you can see it plain as day. Just like Jay Bhattacharya is inserted into this narrative, these people will never question the foundational myth. And this will leave a medical diagnostic standard on the books, in use, in production, unregulated, in perpetuity, provided by Team Worst Case Scenario for the slavers. Done. Just a bunch of happy little accidents that all these people have on video and on direct message and on voicemail saying how great I am, and all of them ignoring me now. But somehow Sage Hannah almost says everything, and Jessica says almost everything, except she says fraud instead of murder. And Jonathan Engler says there's no pandemic, but then can't explain what happened because that would reveal that they're all part of this. Why not explain that there was a biologically expected, a anticipated rise in all-cause mortality? Because if they explained that, then they would also be admitting they understand why there was no epidemiological evidence of spread. It wouldn't be this thing that Denny Rancour gets to go around the world for 4 years and pretend that he's the only one who understands this with his 100-figure papers. But Denny Rancour is another one of these people that should have known that there was a huge signal in the population pyramid coming this decade, and that there was going to be a rise in all-cause mortality that can be seen in any slope of any picture that he's ever put in his graph. But they just kind of shrug their shoulders and say, who knows why it's rising so much? So yeah, I think Denny Rancour is a traitor to American kids. I think that he knows that there was an anticipated rise in expected deaths, and I think he wrote those papers in May 2020 and beyond to cover it up. I think he knows that that anticipated rise in expected deaths was sculpted using murder to create those peaks over there, to create these peaks down here that they could call it was a myth of an RNA pandemic. And Robert Malone and Steve Kirsch and all these lifelong Democrats are now pseudo-conservatives pretending to be part of a Maha movement when all they did was do exactly what was necessary for the big picture, the big global public health narrative. And, I can play this every day and, you can see it clear as day that there's a little bump there, and that when that gets up here, there's going to be a lot more people dying. It's just an eclipse, ladies and gentlemen, that they told us that they were talking to God, and God says that the sun can come back if you're good. And then when the sun came back, we assumed that our chiefs were all talking to God. Except in this scenario, the rise in all-cause mortality was blamed on a novel virus, when in reality they all knew it was coming and they were all winking about it for more than a decade. Maybe even they winked about it behind Trump's back. Boy, I almost choked. So that's it. That's it in a nutshell. An anticipated rise in expected deaths was sculpted using murder and sophisticated lies to create the myth of an RNA pandemic, and Robert Malone and Merrill Nass have been in place for quite some time in order for this to work. Mary Holland was put in place in order for this to work. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was co-opted at some point. The World Health Mercury Project had to change its name because they had to be put in place so that it could be sculpted with murder and sophisticated liars. That's why Children's Health Defense doesn't talk about supplementary oxygen ventilators, lack of antibiotic use, poor use of steroids, remdesivir, midazolam. Don't forget, Robert Malone explained to us on Paul Cottrell's podcast in 2021 that the poor use of steroids, i.e. dexamethasone, could be a hammer for the immune system. You could get rid of all the symptoms so you could send old people back to old folks' homes and let them die. He laughed about it on a stream with Paul Cottrell, an associate of George Webb, the guy that he was suing. Honestly, ladies and gentlemen, these are criminals. They are traitors. And their track record of video statements on the internet reveals them as cooperative traitors in this illusion where the opioid pandemic was allowed to go wild and blamed on other things because, who cares about those people? Where death certificate fraud occurred all over the place to the tune of $30,000 a pop. Financial incentives all throughout Warp Speed just ignored. Companies that came that were doing tracks and trace are all gone now. All this track and trace mask closures mandates, there was profit there. There were old iPads bought by all kinds of hospitals, all this shit. And none of these people want to talk about it because they were all involved in this sculpting of the anticipated rise in all-cause mortality. Just a little bit to make it look sharp, and we can point to it and model off of that slope. Never mind the PCR fraud, the lateral flow test fraud, all of these products made in China. I mean, it's not even a joke. It's real. Some of these things were made by the collaborator of the Human Genome Project, the Beijing Genome, BGI. Never mind the sequencing fraud, right? That was all DITRA for 2 years. They just did it in-house. It's not like everybody was sequencing it on their bench. No, those swabs were all sent to some central location. I wonder why they would send all those swabs to a central location to sequence the virus. Yeah, anyway, this sculpting using murder, how did they do it? Just imagine a team of performers with elaborate costumes and elaborate CVs where they say they have, like 5 postdoctoral degrees. And they're all on the same script where they just ignore this, right? They just ignore this incoming noise. It's nothing. Right? It's nothing. They just ignore this. With their surfer outfits on and their, I'm a vaccinologist and a bioethicist, or I'm a country doctor from Maine and I'm also a long-time bioweapons expert, because that makes sense. They're all one team, ladies and gentlemen. And just like this guy pretends that he has to stop the train and that he has to chalk up his hands and start pushing the train again, these people took an anticipated rise in all-cause mortality and performed a very elaborate theater about a novel virus that we needed repurposed drugs for, that we should fight about those repurposed drugs. Which one's better? That it's a gain-of-function virus, and these people are lying about it. And that elaborate theater was all on the background of a train that didn't need stopping, a train that was doing exactly what they expected it to do each time it came into the winter, with just a little help. And that's these people. These people are responsible for the trap that we are in, on the right at least, on the populist right in America. These people are responsible for the trap that we are in. And only by recognizing their role in our bamboozlement can we escape. There is a document on my website. You can go to gigaohmbiological.com/stuff, and you can find this PDF and download it. McKinsey has explained very well that this population pyramid is a real problem. It's not depopulation, ladies and gentlemen. Our populations are going to collapse. It is a mathematical certainty. They don't need to depopulate us. They already did that when they convinced us not to have as many kids. When they already convinced my brother that it would be better for the world if him and his wife didn't have kids and instead focused on their own careers. That is actually where we are, and they all know it. That's the reason why immigration has to happen, because our population pyramid is so tenuous right now. What do we need schools for in 10 years if there are no little kids in Bethel Park, Pennsylvania? They've known this is coming for decades, ladies and gentlemen. They've known this was coming for decades. It's not depopulation. It is an illusion of consensus about that because it disarms you from understanding what's really going on. An inversion of your kid's sovereignty to experimental animal status. You're too busy stuck in this maze where your consciousness is just wholly given away to the thoughts that they put there every time you hit the scroll. Every time you hit play. And this Lollapalooza of liars is, with military precision, with military software, are the people that are always in front of us. It's always the music in our ears. It's always the track laughter provided by these people that makes this sitcom run. It is the track laughter provided by these fake organizations like Brownstone and CHD and the World Council for Health and Door to Freedom and Independent Medical Alliance that used to be the FLCCC, this International COVID, all these things. These are all a joke. They're all sabotaged. And they've used this biological phenomenon just like is depicted here, where this Mayan or Aztec priest and his ruler are using a known and expected eclipse to fool their entire civilization into believing that they alone are in communication with God. They alone are able to control and manipulate the future, interact with their deity. And as powerful as this is, understand that this is no different than what Robert Malone and Meryl Nass and Mary Holland and Jessica Rose and Pierre Corey have all done. They have taken an anticipated rise in all-cause mortality and manipulated our understanding of it to the extent to which we think they are the people that understand a pandemic and what should have been done and what did happen. When in reality, it was an expected event, an expected biological signal that they are distorting to coerce us into teaching this mythology to our children. No different than these people are coercing these people at the base of the pyramid to believe that they are all powerful. It's coercion. They've been murdering people all day and dropping them down. And the gods have not responded until right now, as they said they would. And now they can say, well, what should we do now? Will the pandemic go away or not? And then they just stop murdering people, and the pandemic goes away. I guess we're done. And what happens when the sun comes back? All of these people believe, just like when the pandemic ended, all of these people believed, well, there was a pandemic for sure, because, you know, I had something strange. There was a pandemic for sure because I know they closed down my school too. I mean, there was a pandemic because I saw it. That witch doctor is communicating with God. I just saw him do it. Those people were stopping the train. I saw him do it. He chalked up his hands. Just like he chalked up his hands at January 25th, 2020 and said, you know what, it's a lab leak. And then went to work promoting Stephen Hatfield's ideas, promoting Lee Min-yan as a rebel and an anti-communist party chick, and promoting Miles Gao. And now here we are with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Health and Human Services Secretary for the Trump administration, a longtime Democrat, a longtime Democrat, a longtime Democrat. I mean, traitor, traitor, liar, liar. But in the camp of advising this guy, I guarantee you that they have his ear. I guarantee you Robert Malone has his ear. Meryl Nass has his ear. Mary Holland has his ear. This guy is surrounded by traitors. And I think this guy up here probably recycled the political show, the political game that was originally discovered by Andrew Wakefield and Polly Tommy in the UK around the year 2000 or 1999, where an anti-vax movement could be used to sway voters into voting for a particular candidate. He saw that and saw that and saw this and that and the other and the needs. He's a Goldman Sachs guy, right? He's not just some dude. He makes movies, you know. And so I think that these people were put in place on social media, put in place in front of us by Senator Ron Johnson to be like this group of heroes, where in reality they are creating an illusion of consensus, which is reinforcing a limited spectrum of debate where our grandchildren will never be free, but in fact the West will end. Just like Brett Weinstein said in that podcast, this could be the end of the West. And I think his handlers have that in mind. They want to extract the remaining wealth of America and give it away to the highest bidder. That's what they're doing. And they have sold our sovereignty. And they'll do that by crashing the dollar. Now, the extraordinary thing is that not only do all these people know me, a lot of them have talked to me for years and now ignore me, but they've all gone around the world together saying the same bullshit for 5 years. And that's how you can see that this is a conscious and intelligent manipulation of our habits and opinions by these people. The intellectual dark web is kind of like the children's story version of it. It's much more malevolent than that. And I think that Noam Chomsky has always been telling us the truth for his overlords or his handlers or the overclass. That's what he's always done. He's always been telling us how it will be done and what they are doing so that we kind of feel helpless and just go along with it. And the reality is these are the people that did it. These are the ones right here. This Lollapalooza of liars. This is your starting lineup for Team Worst Case Scenario. They took an expected rise in all-cause mortality and lied about it. That's what I know for sure. For 5 years, these people have been lying about it. And so again, just to remind you, this is really supported only by viewers like you. Jeff from Earth just gave another huge stream-sustaining donation. But it would be great if we could figure out a way to do this a little bit more militantly. If somebody has $100,000 they want to donate to crushing this fake populist health freedom movement, I think Gigaohm Biological might be a place to put it. And in a month or so, I think we might have the paperwork done for a nonprofit, which will have a very specific set of goals, including producing a freshman in college, senior in high school level biology course that in a couple weeks somebody can succinctly find themselves understanding the illusion of public health and how it was foisted upon us by the same actors over the last 20 years. I think it's a really important thing to understand this Lollapalooza of liars and what it really means to be about all the children, or the grandchildren of Earth. It's a change in time horizon. If you're always on social media, you're thinking in weeks, and you got to really think in generations to see what these people have done and what they are thinking about. And you have to see it as an international collaboration. The American ideal is being destroyed from within and from without by a coordinated group of liars that have taken advantage of this to undermine our understanding. And nobody is in place by accident. I mean, it's in 2013, these two guys are not on CNN by accident. And if you start to see it on this time horizon and realize that in 2015, we had Paul Offit and Mary Holland on Democracy Now!, and that 10 years later, it's still Paul Offit versus Mary Holland, that is because it is for all the marbles, and none of these people are in front of us by chance. If you understand that,
that Trump's not doing, though, is he wants to keep
that you just saw Paul Offit selling the book of children's health defense. Actually, the video that he just put out today also puts that book right in front. The Fauci book sells it for them. It's the same as admitting now that The View is like, oh, wow, Steve Bannon said that. Steve Bannon is so cool. Wow, Steve Bannon is great. Steve Bannon is going to be in front of us now also on Gavin Newsom's podcast, for the love of goodness. That's because no one is in front of us by chance. We are being manipulated into believing something that is definitely untrue. And that goes all the way back to the beginning of the pandemic, and it's not even the beginning if you think February 2021, where a bunch of fake dissidents, part of the team worst case scenario, were put out and put in place with a narrative that would not successfully, and it was intentional, it would not be successful in challenging the pandemic narrative. It would essentially put people out of play. And these same people pretty much show up in every podcast for the next 5 years. Steve Kirsch's podcast, the Tommy podcast, all of this nonsense, pushing their very limited spectrum of debate. That's why none of these no virus people have ever been able to say murder. That's why none of these no virus people have ever really interacted with Jessica Rose or with Kevin McKernan or with Robert Malone to say that all these people are just pushing virology and they're all fake. Instead, they got together to say that about me. Instead, McCarran has said that about me countless times in the last 5 years while ignoring them. And that is because it is all one malevolent show that was started in the beginning of 2020 or a little bit before. And the people that were put in place to be key players were put in place even years earlier, like Brett Weinstein. And that is because this is for all the marbles. That's why he got a grant then. But then, his track record really suggests that he's kind of a creep. Because now he's collaborating with Steve Kirsch and these people all, and it is all just one big show. Because Kevin McKernan was on my stream already years and years ago. And in fact, today is the anniversary, the 2-year anniversary of the March 17th, 2023 St. Patrick's Day presentation where Jessica Rose says, wow, your presentation to Paul was so amazing. It kept me up at night. Yes, that was actually 2 full years ago when I explained to them how infectious clones could be used to create the illusion of the pandemic on a hot background. And Kevin McKernan and Stephanie Seneff and John Bodwin and Jessica Rose listened intently and agreed, wow. Yes, 2 years ago. There's only one way to see it. They're traitors. That's why Northrup was on his stream not even a couple weeks ago. She was seated in the narrative the same as any of these other people. That's why Stephanie Seneff was on Kevin McCarran's stream in 2024. This is one show. That's why McCarran and McKernan were promoted on the LifeSite News all at the same time about prions with a video of both of them. Because it's one malevolent show that includes the no virus people like like Tom Cowan with a book, and Andrew Kaufman with a book, but also Kevin McCairn, who knew that these were the bad guys in 2020, and Kevin McKernan, who of course knew that PCR worked from the very beginning. Can this whole promotion, these things don't happen by accident, okay? That's the same reason why in October 2020, this guy was telling you not to pay attention to who? Andrew Kaufman. Isn't that interesting? And what's even more interesting is that in just a few months later in 2021, there would be another guy with 1 million subscribers that would be talking about Andy Kaufman. Because it's all one malevolent show. They're given parts of the script to promote different aspects of or different members of Team Worst Case Scenario, and independent of who you choose to cheer for or who you chose to root for, none of them will ever question each other. That's why the no virus people and all these smarties have never gotten together to say that Jessica Rose is obviously fake because she worked on HIV in her postdocs, because she worked on virology models in her postdoc. Why won't these people who are skeptical of the HIV biology ever mention that Jessica Rose was an HIV virologist for her PhD? It's because they are all on the same team, ladies and gentlemen. They are all part of this. That's why they will not question her. That's why they have never questioned her. But instead, they all coordinate together to curate a very lively debate within that very limited spectrum. I want you to challenge yourself to go to Peggy Hall's YouTube channel and find out when she started making videos and what she made them about. I want you to challenge yourself to go in the back and see what Nicholas Hushner was doing in 2020 and 2021. What was Dr. Drew doing in 2020 and 2021? Find out where their earliest video, where the Weinsteins we know. But what about Julian Michaels? What about her? What was she doing in 2020? When was her first contact with the pandemic in virology? Because if you find these answers yourself, they'll be much more convincing as evidence. None of these people that are currently in front of us getting massively promoted, getting very lucrative Substacks or taking over other people's lucrative Substacks, none of these people are in place by accident. And if you were to just dare to go look at 2020 or 2019 or 2021 to find out what any of these traders were doing, you would find the answers that I found. And it wouldn't be so hard for you to understand why I can't stop doing this particular stream with this particular message, because we are under the spell of these people that have fooled us into this mystery solving exercise, and we have come to accept their monsters as a result. I know because I accepted them. I was part of it. And my track record is not flawless. It's just got integrity from beginning to end. And now all of these people, for some reason, are claiming integrity from beginning to end. It is hysterical how much of our wording and how much of our work is being absorbed by these people. Brandy Vaughn has billboards in 2016, and unfortunately these people are all activated then. They all start their appearance there, and in fact what I'm suggesting to you is not very fun to suggest, but I'm going to suggest it anyway. These people have been standing in front of Brandy Vaughn for several years in preparation for the pandemic. They have been put in position to be the messengers, and that is the explanation for why all of these people in this picture are promoting each other and not Brandy at the start of the pandemic. That's why that guy right there has this book and is saying exactly what this book says in this video. This book was published in 2016 with the environmental and genetic causes of autism, no real commitment to the idea that intramuscular injection is dumb. Of course not, because these people are all interested in saving the vaccine schedule. This guy who was book with them as well, here he is promoting Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in 2017 already. It's not by accident that these people with a delayed vaccine schedule or something like that are the ones that are promoted, because there is no desire to tell our kids the truth. That's also the reason why Stephanie Seneff is out there saying, oh my goodness, everybody's going to be autistic in another generation, and it must be glyphosate. You know, the same thing that Robert Malone just blamed autism on about a week ago in his Substack. Yes, that is correct. Robert Malone said that it was glyphosate that was causing autism. What you need to understand is this.
Well, make no mistake that the other side, without a doubt, do not want the public, the people, the parents, to hear the stories of the unvaccinated. They want us to talk about MMR, autism, Andrew Wakefield. They want that to go down the same path every single time, because they can attack us. But you cannot attack the generations and generations of the health of the unvaccinated. Vax2 doesn't even begin to cover the health of the unvaccinated. We uncovered so much. We uncovered generations and generations standing there saying, we've never had any cancer in our family. We've never had rheumatoid arthritis in our family. We've never had diabetes. We've never had any of these things that you see that are just common elderly conditions. They don't have them in their families. And as we went deeper and deeper into the world of the unvaccinated, I could see, the team could see, this is why they don't do the vax-unvax study. This is why they're trying to censor us and stop us. And they're
now, if you think I'm making this up, she doesn't say that anymore, of course. Since the start of the pandemic, it's all about mandates. This is the green book that supposedly eventually they published, the vax-unvax book. Let's read what it says inside the cover. This book is based on over 100 studies in peer-reviewed literature that consider vaccinated versus unvaccinated population. Each study is analyzed, and health differences among infants, children, and adults who have been vaccinated and those who have not are presented and put in context. Readers will find information on the infant childhood vaccine schedule, thimerosal and vaccines, live virus vaccines, human papillomavirus vaccine, vaccination and Gulf War illness, human influenza vaccines, hepatitis B vaccination, the COVID-19 vaccine, and vaccines during pregnancy. Given the massive push to vaccinate the entire global population, this book is timely and necessary for individuals to make informed choices for themselves and their families. So what's the message of the book? Is intramuscular injection dumb? Have they been lying to us about their ability to high fidelity augment children's immune system at birth with a hepatitis B? What in the nine hells is this book in 2023 if it's not intramuscular injection is dumb? Well, or that the unvaccinated people are so much healthier until they're very, very old, like what Polly just said there. That's not the message of this book either, apparently. Can you see it yet? Would it surprise you that Brian Hooker used to work for the Department of Energy? That's just conveniently left off of his CV on the CHD website. The Department of Energy is the same department that funds nuclear weapons, nuclear power plants, and the Human Genome Project.
petrified of these people speaking out, because when the world knows about the health of the unvaccinated, game over. They're done.
They're done. And so that's why, of course, this guy had to be in place at the beginning of the pandemic, talking about a fear and cleavage site, talking about the lab leak already. In place with a book. That's why our now Health and Human Services Secretary went in his own house on a podcast to explain why Judy Mikovits is a hero. Not Brandy Vaughn, but Judy Mikovits, the one that was advocating for us to be vaccinated against the XMRV virus so that the vaccine schedule would be safe. The one who claimed to have solved chronic fatigue syndrome because she found a mouse virus contaminating vaccines. So vaccines could be safe if you just listened to her. There is nobody on our team. There's nobody coming to our rescue.
We're Americans when we're only 4% of the world.
That's the reason why this new clown is arguing with this old clown, and why somebody in the UK is telling us all about how great they are, how great the Cali means is. This guy who also says that John Campbell's great. These are all UK meddlers that allowed murder to happen in their own country and is still not speaking up about it now. These are paid meddlers on our social media platforms. Nobody is there by chance with 150,000 subscribers, never mind 1 million. Nobody is there by chance. It is an investment. People invested in those people. People started businesses. This is spontaneous. My finding myself in this book is spontaneous. It's a huge mistake. It's not supposed to be there. I'm convinced of it. These people were unsuccessful. That's why Jessica Hockett only started messing with me in August of 2023. That's why they only wrote their thing in 2024. That's why this thing kept repeating. After I did it all for the Wuhan cover-up book, I had to do it for another year for these chumps. Only to result in the same bullshit where they kind of absorb everything that I'm talking about, but not really, and kind of pretend to cite me, but not really. Instead, they cited Vinay Prasad, who I can show you with his timeline is an incredibly big joke. But I think I want to stay focused on this and this illusion that's being created right now, this illusion of a very lively debate within this limited spectrum. And very specifically, I want to remind you that right now down there in the corner
or bird flu
is Brett Weinstein and his wife talking about mRNA vaccines in 2025, and it's an absolute joke because of this timeline. Now, in this timeline in particular is a little pink area up there that's also coded here by these names. I was in a Signal chat with Brett Weinstein and these other traders for about half a year or 3/4 of a year. It includes Matthew Crawford and Chris Martenson and Heather Haying and Brett Weinstein and Alexandros Marinos. I think he might be dating Elon Musk. And then Jumi Kim. And so the one that I want to focus on right now is Chris Martenson, because again, this is just easy pickings. I've had Chris Martenson on my list for a very long time. I've been not really saying his name. I don't have his picture yet in there. But I have shown you a video at the beginning of this one where he's involved in a Kevin McKernan, Steve Kirsch, Chris Martenson, and Byram Bridle stream, where the three of them are coordinatedly bamboozling Byram Bridle. Well, I would suggest to you that Chris Martenson is somebody that was also co-opted at the beginning of the pandemic, maybe even before, was already playing for these people, and you can see it very clearly on his YouTube channel. You can just see where the thumbnails change and where he decides that, oh my gosh, I guess I have to start talking about the pandemic. And I already know what's going on. I'm already pretty aware of what's going on. Now remember, this guy was in a Signal chat group with me 2 years after the video that I'm about to play. So let's go back to 2020. Remember, when we go back to 2020, and with all these people, you're going to see they're traitors. If you go back with Drew or with Holshner or with Michaels or with Sam Cedar or with the fluoride lady, or you go back with Peggy Hall, you're not going to find people that were doubting the biological narrative. You were going to find people that were up in arms about it, reinforcing it, making sure people complied with believing in it. And I am going to do all that work, but just telling you, if you wanted to, you could do that work for you, and it's really easy. You get really big results really fast. So to remind you, kind of simplify it again, the pandemic started in 2020, and it wasn't until the end of 2021 that I was finally invited to be in a Signal chat group with these meddlers that include Chris Martenson. And so I'm going to go back to the earliest video that Chris Martenson of Peace Prosperity put out about the coronavirus and when it was. Let's see. I guess it was, I'm going to move this down a little bit so you can see it better. It was January 24th, 2020, one day before Steve Bannon would declare a lab leak on his war room. One day before. And 2 days before Paul Cottrell would say it was a lab leak, the hero doctor from the George Webb group. So this guy, this is his very first coronavirus stream, and before the coronavirus starts, Chris Martenson is almost exclusively doing interviews, some of which are only audio, they're not even video. And then suddenly at the beginning of the pandemic, he doesn't need to do interviews anymore. He just needs to tell you what he's been scripted to tell you, which is a very notable change in his programming.
Good morning, everyone. Hey, Chris Martenson here. I just wanted to share a little bit of my experience with you here. It's January 24th. That would be Friday. It's about 7:30 in the morning, and I just spent a good chunk of my morning looking through the absolutely unbelievable pandemic virus stories coming out of China. And of course, there's a real clamp on information there. But with social media, we can see that it's pretty bad, it's pretty desperate, and that this virus checks all the boxes.
Right away, you hear Chris Martenson telling you what? That social media is revealing the cover-up. You see, this is part of the trap, right? He's suggesting to you that the mystery is being broken. The truth is being revealed on social media. That is absolutely ridiculous. That is not true at all, but that's what also Kevin McKernan said at the beginning of the pandemic, that the truth was being revealed on Twitter. That's what Robert Malone said, that the new kinds of Gab and Telegram and LinkedIn was censoring him, so they went to other social media where the truth could be revealed. Again, just see it for what it is. These people, they coerced us into accepting this narrative that there was some cover-up happening in mainstream media, and that military programs that we've been induced to calling social media was the place where the truth would be revealed.
For being a pandemic candidate, and it's getting all over the world. And the response of my government in the United States, but also elsewhere in the world, is to just sort of shrug and say, well, you know, if people are coming in from wherever, what we're going to do is we'll scan their foreheads with a temperature reader. And of course, this is useless because this virus has a 5-day incubation period.
A 5-day incubation period. So it's useless to test people's temperature at airports. They're just going to get through with asymptomatic conditions. So there's the first on narrative before anybody else. On the 24th of January, he's already certain that there is a significant asymptomatic spread window that we need to be worried about, and in fact will result in something tragic.
At a minimum. So that means you can be infected, be completely asymptomatic, not have any symptoms yourself that you're aware of, no aches, no runny nose, nothing like that, and no fever, but still be fully infected. And so, of course...
Now remember, before the pandemic, he's actually concerned about the collapse of the Fed. He's actually concerned about gold and gold prices and the artificial, keeping down of gold. He's concerned about all kinds of things financial, not biological. He's not worried about the vaccine schedule, not even worried about the MMR shot. He's really only working on gold and money and investment. And so it's a very strange pivot to come in here now already understanding how a viral respiratory disease would work and how it spreads and some of the details about it. But as he said at the beginning of the video, he spent the first 4 hours of this morning reading, and so now he totally understands what's going on.
These scans that they're doing at the airport are stupid. So you'd think, though, that this would be top news. A pandemic is like one of the most amazingly destructive things that could possibly happen. It could harm.
A pandemic is one of the most amazingly destructive things that could happen, says Chris Martinson, expert on gold and the Fed.
Life and limb. So let's take a quick tour through the news here in the United States and see how we're doing. So I'm just scrolling here through a standard Internet Explorer browser. This is the main news feed that comes up. Let's see. Well, I guess we got a 15-year-old that's going to upset something about the Australian Open. That's an ad. Let's see. An explosion. Yep. Okay. Explosion in Houston. Some random explosion in one city. Yep. Got to put that right near the top. Another ad. Shocking moments at the Grammy Awards. Yeah, I get shocked.
So on January 24th, 2020, Chris Martinson is already aware that there is a media blackout on coronavirus and pandemic news, even though he knows that pandemics can be like the worst thing ever.
Shopping. Yep, you could look at shopping. Come on, where's this virus? Let's see. Trump, something about Trump here, something about Brady, another ad. Flirting, is that the secret to a happy marriage? Hey, oh, this is good news. U.S. futures point to slightly higher open on Wall Street. That's been happening every day for months and months as the Federal Reserve seeks to make the wealthy wealthier and to cut everybody else out from the American dream. Love that. Thank you, CNBC, for letting us know that that's happening again. That doesn't seem important. Al Capone's car, I mean, mildly interesting, but really not important compared to a pandemic. Let's see. Stuck indoors, keep your dog entertained on a snowy or rainy day. Not really important. Some guy turns himself in. I don't know. Yes, people died. Musicians, I guess. Oh! Kamala Harris said to be weighing an endorsement of Joe Biden. Wow, that's an irrelevant meeting irrelevant. That's irrelevant squared. Yeah, Meghan and Harry's mansion, all-star. Come on, we're banks handing out beefed up credit lines no one asked for. God. Oh, this is dystopian. That's right there, a boring dystopia right there. Toddler's Playroom includes capitalist logos and things like that. That's fantastic. Get out of here with that. Let's see. Come on, where's the virus news? Nope. Brad Pitt, nope. Nope. Ads. Warren slams Bloomberg for no. Most important Grammy nominees. No, I'm not. Come on. 20. Ban cashless stores and no. Ad, there's another ad. Voices, my time with the British. Jesus, 2 stories about the British aristocracy. Again, irrelevant squared. What could possibly be less relevant to my life than the British aristocracy? Nothing, except for maybe Kamala Harris endorsing Joe Biden. Both just absolutely nothing to do with my life. There's a pandemic coming. Okay, here's really an ad disguised as an article. Fidget spinners, great.
There is a pandemic coming. So keep in mind, that is something he knows. He knows. He's certain. And he's going to explain how certain he is on January 24th, 2020.
Come on, people. Las Vegas changes what happens. Your slogan, that's important, I guess, for some people. Results, another ad. What does 2020 hold for Tiger? Again, completely irrelevant to my daily life. Meet the Grammy nominee. A lot of Grammy stuff. So somebody's really paying for a bunch of Grammy stuff to come out here.
So it wasn't always bad news, but now that it's a coronavirus cover-up, it's all irrelevant news. You see how silly that is? It was always irrelevant news. They always put irrelevant things in his news feed. He doesn't have his news feed from 3 days ago where he shows all kinds of stuff being there and then it being cut out. Do you see? This is all bullshit. This is a bullshit posturing stream to start a 5-year posturing stance about a lab leak virus that doesn't exist, about a whole biological mythology that they would like to pass on to our kids, that these guys are employed to pass on to our kids. Ladies and gentlemen, these are traitors to our grandkids.
Finally, how China's coronavirus outbreak could threaten the global economy. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? That's it? Yep, that's it. That's the only take that the United States press, mainstream press, the people who have been absolutely falling down on the job and failing to bring you the news that you need and deserve. The only thing they could really think to do to tell you about a pandemic, which, by the way, if it comes to this country, it will mean millions of dead, tens of millions severely injured and ill, it would be one of the worst catastrophes that could happen in our country in a long time. And the angle they want to take on that is not how you could protect yourself, not the severe mainstream press, the people who have been absolutely falling down on the job and failing to bring you the news that you need and deserve. The only thing they could really think to do to tell you about a pandemic, which, by the way, if it comes to this country, it will mean millions of dead, tens of millions severely injured and ill. It would be one of the worst catastrophes that could happen in our country in a long time.
This is a traitor to our grandchildren, reading a script for the national security state. Wittingly or unwittingly, I don't care. There's no other way to see it. That's why he was in that Signal chat for almost a year with me, where I explained to him it was transfection. I explained to him that there's a hot background. I explained that the whole idea of a novel virus was absurd, and he ignored it. All the way until 2024, when he could be in a stream with Kevin McKernan and Steve Kirsch and Byron Bridle and ignore it. Because these people are traitors, ladies and gentlemen. Traitors of the worst kind. And the unfortunate place that I'm in is that I'm one of the only people who can show you, because they tried to trick me. For 5 years, they tried to co-opt me, to convince me of their illusion of consensus, that how are you going to argue with all these people? These people don't have the biology to back up the bullshit that they've been pushing. That's the reality of it. And that's why now the only thing they can do is ignore me. The only thing they can do is ignore the mentor chain that Mark Kulak has outlined. They can only ignore this history that we are now laying bare. Because if they don't ignore it, the truth will be revealed. There's no way to obfuscate their timelines. There's no way to obfuscate how ridiculous their stance was in 2020 and 2021, given where they are now. What the hell happened there? Did I go backwards or something? Sorry. Got to get out of here for a second. I think I went backwards. Let me see. Yeah, I did. And so now I want to keep playing that, because there's more after he says that worst case scenario. Oops. Guess I got to go back on. Yeah. I'm just going to fast forward it a little bit, though.
Failing to bring you the news that you need and deserve. The only thing they could really think to do to tell you about a pandemic, which, by the way, if it comes to this country, it will mean millions of dead, tens of millions severely injured and ill. It would be one of the worst catastrophes that could happen in our country in a long time. And the angle they want to take on that is not how you could protect yourself, not the severity of this, not informing you about the nature of pandemics, not giving you updated information about where we really stand in this, not telling you how you could avoid it and things you could do, which we are doing at Peak Prosperity. But they want to tell you how the outbreak could threaten the global economy. That's the angle they need to go with here, because the mainstream media is now completely captured, bought, and paid for by the billionaire class, by the so-called corporatists, which isn't really, it's not really capitalism, it's corporatism, right? Which is fascism, if you want to call that the merger of state and corporations. But it's really just super wealthy corporations making a lot of money and rentier harvesting all of your wages and slave labor inputs and all of that stuff. That's the most important angle is, gosh, this coronavirus outbreak could threaten the global economy. That's what they're leading off with here. In fact, that's the only thing they're coming up with. This is absolutely dystopian. I'm shocked that we are at the place where we can't even at the collective level dredge up some amount of concern for our fellow humans and understand that this pandemic is going to be a human catastrophe, not something that dings corporate profit lines. That maybe there's something more important in the story, but that just tells you where we really are in the story. All right, I'm done.
I'm done. That was his thing. That was the whole thing. That's it. You got to go to Peak Prosperity and sign up if you want to know more. About a week later, he says that there's no way to stop it. About a week later, he says coronavirus pandemic is now unstoppable, and it's just a happy accident. Just a happy accident that all these people were in place. Just a happy accident that Brett Weinstein got fired or or got to sue and got $500,000. It's just a happy accident that his father worked with Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s father on the formation of the FDA. It's just a happy little accident that Jessica Rose is an HIV virologist. It's just a happy little accident that this guy's been involved with Rick Bright as a career. It's just a happy accident that his best friend that used to sleep on his couch is David Hone. It's just a happy little accident that he was vetted for U.S. AMRID. It's just a happy little accident that none of these people ever talk about the Alison Tortura paper with Sina Bavari that I got in this book and explained very well in this book as being evidence that the national security state had the narrative all ready to go. Thanks to Mark Kulak, who found that paper and showed it to me. I got it in this book. These people are all liars. They are just coordinating with people like Hart, Claire Craig, who was into the 100,000 Genomes Project, just like Brian Hooker apparently worked for the Department of Energy. All of these people worked for pharma. They worked for insurance companies, so they have no excuse not to know how biologics are made. They have no excuse not to know that the population pyramid predicted a rise in all-cause mortality, especially in America, where people are old and fat. No, ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid there's no explanation for these liars and for their coordinated action other than they are put in place by the slavers. Kevin McKernan was put in place by the slavers. That's the reason why he's being promoted by Mary Holland and CHD. That's the reason why he had to go on a podcast at the end of last year and lie about how this book was written and give credit to somebody who came to my house in 2022 as a liar and a meddler, who then spent the next 2.5 years, sometimes in Japan, with a liar and a meddler, meddling with my ability to make a living. These are traitors. Charles Rixey is an American traitor, just like Kevin McKernan is an American traitor. They may be involved in the Truman Show action of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I really don't know. Maybe Robert F. Kennedy Jr. coordinates all of them, for all I care. But I know for sure they are traitors to our grandkids, one and all. It's a hard message to hear. It's also a very, very shitty message to have to give. But I don't think I have any other choice, because no one else is going to say it. No one else is going to point out to you that the populist movement that is called MAHA was manufactured out of whole cloth by people like Kevin McKernan. They're never going to tell you the truth that the childhood vaccine schedule in America is a criminal enterprise. CHD won't say it, ICANN won't say it, and they'll pretend that they're trying to be, diplomatic or political, and it's a lie. It's a lie, just like this is a lie.
I believe that is much more likely it's a lab leak.
That's why these people won't say it. The Brownstone Institute never says anything. The Panda never says. One of these foreign organizations could crush America. The NCI or Panda, they could crush America by just pointing out that the American childhood vaccine schedule, when compared to any other country in the West, is a criminal enterprise, and therefore the American system should be ashamed of itself. But they're not going to do that because that's not in their script. That script frees the American public from the trap. It reawakens the American children, and it revitalizes the American dream. That's the reason why these people will never say it. That's the reason why these people still can't seem to come up with a list that we've already had together for more than a couple years now. And instead, we were tricked into solving a mystery that these people were all enacting on stage, thinking that we could change the outcome of the play. That's why these people will never talk about the heart of the matter, ingestion versus injection. That's why they'll never mention my name again, never mention Mark again, because they can't. Because if they do, then they'll have to debate the truth. If they mention us, they will have to mention Brandy Vaughn, because we're never going to stop mentioning her. There is no safe vaccine, just as she said it. The intramuscular injection of medicine is a lie. That's my addition to Brandy's language. If you want to trust somebody and you think you can, put together a timeline of what they said when. And that timeline should edify your trust. It should support the idea that they have learned, that they have come to an understanding that they didn't have before the pandemic. Those are the only people you can trust. And I think if you do that work faithfully, you will find that you can find the truth for America's grandchildren on your own. That you can come up with your own version of American history that edifies the idea that we were lied to by people on social media working for the slavers. You don't necessarily need my personal experience to bring you to the light. You can just look at the people that you've now been bamboozled into trusting and check their work. Check their work. Because this is for all the marbles, and that means the grandchildren of Earth. They won't talk about injection versus ingestion. They won't talk about it. They won't talk about it. They won't talk about PCR as being a diagnostic fraud. They won't talk about synthetic recombinant genetics being the staple of all protein biologic production, and how it's even better if they could just stop at mRNA and not have to purify it in the first place, which is what Kevin McKernan and Robert Malone were always in place to obfuscate. The simple truth is that they can only do one thing. They can make pure quantities of DNA, and then they can do stuff with it, transform and transfect things with it, and call that a virology, call that infectious disease, call that a model for something that it is not. They are not recapitulating natural phenomenon when they make large quantities of pure DNA and then put it places. They are not recapitulating natural phenomenon when they take large quantities of pure DNA and put it in places. But that's all they would have to do to create the illusion of the pandemic, especially if they already had an agent in Wuhan willing to cooperate. Transfection is a crime. These people have all known it. Kevin McKernan knows it. That's why he's lying about the word. Robert Malone knows it. That's why he's never used the word. And Brett Weinstein and Heather Haying are lying about it because they are not sophisticated enough to understand how they are being used. They just are happy to be used. That's why none of these people have ever talked about a placebo and how wonderfully easy it would be to make billions of dollars with a placebo and also conveniently avoid this huge safety signal that would expose their lies for what it is. That's why instead all these people are focused on endemicity, and even Robert Malone said it would be really terrible if this goes endemic. That's the worst case scenario. I think we got him, ladies and gentlemen. I could keep doing this until I'm 80. Just the same stream with a few different slides and a few choice different videos. I can keep explaining to you how a hot background could be misconstrued as spread using non-specific PCR tests manufactured in China. I can go on until I'm 80 years old explaining every day why RNA cannot pandemic, and that's why they had to have Tony Fauci in place for so freaking long. Because you need a red thread of a person like Robert Malone or Kevin McKernan or Mark Lander or Tony Fauci or Francis Collins to be in place long enough for such a thorough bamboozlement and insertion of a mythology to take hold. And they're going to have to ignore me for 30 years in order for that mythology to be passed on to your kids and mine. Ladies and gentlemen, RNA cannot pandemic. Intramuscular injection of medicine is dumb. Transfecting healthy humans was always a crime, and the population pyramids were always a problem in need of management. That's what these people are lying about. If you want to know more, try to hunt down the team worst case scenario, hunt down what they were doing, and make sure that this truth does not become, this lie does not become the truth. Can't let the past fade away. We've got to archive it. Archive 2019, archive 2020, archive 2021, because this is where the incriminating evidence is. Thank you very much for joining me. I'll see you guys again soon. There's a lot of repeating there, but this Monday stream is going to continue to be like that. It's going to be a meddler stream. It's going to be trying to explain how this illusion of consensus is created. The rest of the week, if I'm live, we'll try to do more focused study halls, maybe an occasional journal club until I figure out my rhythm on the basketball court. In case you're curious, one of the things that we're waiting for with the basketball court is for me to get in better shape. One of the things that became obvious to me as I looked at my early hardwood videos is that I am kind of out of shape. And so I've been spending the last 2 months getting in shape. And I'm just going to show you on my little app here that keeps track of it. I have, in the past 2 months, I have shot 7,820 shots, and I have made 4,238 for a total of 54% shooting over the last 2 months. And I think it's about 60 days of working out already. So I'm getting better. Yesterday I hung on the rim with an incredible amount of ease. So I'm also close to maybe being able to dunk again. So I'm getting very excited about how this is all going to work out in the end, because we're not going anywhere. And this story is American history, so it needs repeating, it needs refining, and I'm just got to be here because somebody's going to challenge me eventually, right? Of course they are. Of course they are. Of course they are. Of course they will.